Hey, Brett. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Brooke. I'm doing great. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you as well. I'm happy to have you here today on our inaugural version of the Bridge AI Word Series. Thank you for being the willing participant of the inaugural launch. I wanted to just introduce you to our audience. With me today is Brett Kiley. He's Vice President of Healthcare at Ciklum. He and I had the opportunity to be introduced by I want to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Tony Fox. Tony is a great friend to both of us. And when each of us speak AI, Tony thought that the two of us should have a conversation. And those conversations have gone on for a long time now. And every time they get better and better. So thank you, Brett, for joining us today. I'll turn it over to you and have you share a little bit about what you do in relationship to AI and how you're involved in the healthcare arena.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. My background's 2 decades with CVS Health. I ran retail operations. Then I went to Caremark and worked in specialty. I led patient experience, process improvement, and heavily involved with the digital and the technology world and how it impacts patients. Did that for 20 years, wanted to do something else and had a couple of different opportunities. Ciklum is at the cutting edge of what we can do with AI and automation and ways we can make things better for our patients and for our employees. So now I'm the vice president at Ciklum here. It's a global company. It's been around 20 years doing fantastic work in data, AI, and I love what we do. And talking with you, Brooke, I love what you do too, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. And at first glance, I think you're an interesting choice for our inaugural component, in part because it's AI everywhere all at once, right? And each of us have spent our careers in a highly regulated industries, albeit different, but each of us have the opportunity to have exposure to very sensitive client data. And in that context, our word this week is AI afraid. And why then might people in the context of artificial intelligence be afraid? And whether it's related to data or it's related to adoption, love to hear your take on that.
Yeah. It's very common. I know you're in the finance, I'm in the healthcare. And I think when I look at afraid, when I talk to clients and they'll look at, yes, AI could do this, and this is how the automation could make things better. But what if this happens? And in a lot of their minds, the risk outweighs the benefit. And there is some truth to it. You see the news story with the big headline that here's how AI messed up and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or even worse. And so there are those things. There are many ways that you can mitigate that to not be as afraid, as you know, and the companies that are doing that are really moving forward.
So talk to me about that for just a little bit. What are the risk and the guardrails and the risk differentiators that you can apply? And you work with enterprise level clients, but I suspect that even within those enterprises, you see variations of existing infrastructure that can have an impact on finding risk. So talk a little bit about that, about how you see organizations defining the level of risk differently.
Yeah, it's probably easiest just to picture the closer you are to the patient, the higher the risk there is. If I tell the patient, hey, take this wrong medicine, that's going to really impact them. But if I'm in the back end and I'm moving around an email from one box to another and it goes to the wrong box, not as much of an impact. So when we're looking at where do we start with AI and where do we mitigate that risk up front, it's looking for those areas that will make things better, smoother, automating manual processes, the background, the billing, the claim system. There's a lot of things that make things better for everybody without that downside risk. There's plenty of opportunity there just to start with.
That analogy it's a great one, actually. I might use that on the mortgage side. It's true, right? That if are you going direct to the borrower and self-serving, and if so, in what capacity? And what are your off points whereby you'd have the opportunity to direct to a human in the loop? And depending on what stage of that you are in the process and or what type of information you're actually garnering from the client, those are the opportunities to have the conversation about what might those guardrails need to be. I think you bring up a great point in relationship to the overall and How then do you help organizations decide where those risk levels are and what might be an identified first best use case?
Yeah. So there's going to be some level of risk tolerance. And here's what's interesting about it. I feel like the number one in the states, whoever's the number one leader of, best insurance company, number one in pharmacy, whatever, their risk tolerance is pretty low. And then number two and number three, their risk tolerance is a little bit higher because they want to grow, they want to innovate, they want to push. And how do I become number three goes to two and two goes to one? And what's happening, what we're seeing is these large, I've been number one for a long time, that aren't really wanting to innovate, whether it's risk or don't want to invest or just the complacency of being number one. You've got some up and comers that are growing rapidly, and they're doing it the right way, like meeting the right security requirements, meeting the regulatory, building an AI first and meeting those requirements instead of trying to latch on AI along the way. It's huge upside there.
I think it's just an outstanding point, and that number one size doesn't fit all, right? And in addition to that, that AI in its evolving forms can be an equalizer. In for decades, some of the technologies that existed were so extraordinarily costly that unless you were extraordinarily large, it wasn't necessarily an option, right? I think that's both the plus and the downside related to these evolving technologies, that it opens the door for smaller or more competitive institutions to take leaps that may have previously taken a much longer time span or frankly may not have existed. And it also, I think that there's an opportunity for enterprise number ones, number twos, whoever those competitors are. Certainly in the mortgage space, some of the largest lending institutions are technology companies that actually do mortgages as compared to mortgage institutions that offer technology. And we're seeing a variance across those lines and opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it translates across industry many, many ways. Yeah, good talk.
I think one last question for you. So, in the context of adoption and what you're seeing is the human side of it, and internally within employee ranks, what's your sense of what's happening related to artificial intelligence and its acceptance?
So this is a great topic. There's so many companies out there with a fancy new product and say, this is the greatest product ever, you'll love it. And some of our clients would buy those products and then wonder, why does nobody want to use it? And that's where I feel like we're different. I know we're different because you start with the end user in mind and the client, your customer's customer. And then you look at your frontline employees and you see how are they going to use and adopt this. And then when you build it or you implement it, people want it. Perfect example of this is automating notes. So if I'm a call center rep and I'm taking notes manually in that 30 seconds after the call hangs up before the next one calls in, my notes are not very good. I struggle. You flip in automatic transcription, automatic note taking, the call's over. There's all my notes beautifully organized, already put into place, and the action items are already being sent out. That rep loves it and never wants to go back. So in those examples, implementation is very easy, very fast.
I think that's a great example. And I appreciate you spending time with us today and giving the corollaries, quite honestly, because that's part of what our mission is to spread the AI, that it's not necessarily just an individual business problem, but it's across our lifescape. And in this case, both financial as well as healthcare impacts are going to be dramatic across the board. We're already seeing those positive progresses, right? But as we close, I want to close on something fun. So I've asked you in advance to think about what's something that a tool or a tidbit that you've learned in your AI journey that might be helpful to others who are listening in today.
There's plenty of different tools out there, and I encourage people just to go out and see what's new and what's exciting. I know Google with Gemini has come out with some fantastic products. One I'd share that I've used recently and loved is Notebook LM. And we use Notebook LM to create this audio podcast. Okay, that's fine. Some people use that. But what's really A cool way to use this is I have a 9-year-old son. I took a couple of prompts, like really good at soccer, loves school, happy about his award, whatever, just a couple sentences, put that in there. And now you have two adults having a fancy podcast about how great this kid is. And a little 4-minute podcast like that, I would encourage everybody to do something and watch your kids just light up.
I love that. And, thank you for giving the example across Lifescape and how we're bringing our kids earlier and more often. And I think in some respects, I suspect your 9-year-old may be teaching you or I things quickly in the future as well. But thank you.
Absolutely. Yes,
Appreciate your
yes.
share.
Thank you so much.